Hello everyone, and I hope you're doing well. So today we're going to work on a new workshop about n8n. What you're seeing here is a workflow. This is a workflow that's very easy to implement. And above all, it's packed with nodes that are really interesting, like the Gmail node, as well as Google Sheets and Google Drive. So to start, what does this workflow do? Well, quite simply, when I receive an email, this workflow can automatically detect that I've received an email, and it will perform what's called classification. It will be able to determine whether it's a job application email or something else. If it detects that it's a candidate who sent an email with their resume, it will save the resume and simply create a Google Sheets file for me with all the information related to that resume. And most importantly, it will assign what's called a score to that resume. So the score will actually help me sort through and identify which resumes should be prioritized because they best match my job offer. And so I can go directly to the candidates with a high score in order to contact them and proceed with the interview process. It also sends a confirmation of receipt to the candidate, and this workflow system really helps me organize the entire recruitment process efficiently. Let me give you an example. It's just to test an example on the Google Sheets that was created. So I can find all the information I need, but my candidate also has a score. So at this point, I can sort to see which score corresponds to this particular CV. The closer the score is to 10, the more interesting the candidate is. And here I find the summary, and I also find a copy of this CV on my Google Drive so I can review it later. So the whole system is actually well connected. We'll try to see how it works. And of course, you also have the option to download it directly. So I'll leave you with the documentation for this course, specifically the section where you can download this workflow. So the goal of this training is first to learn how to create the workflow from A to Z, because it's very important that we understand all the modules and all the connections. That way we'll be able to really master the n8n tools and even be able to update this workflow ourselves later on. So you have the option either to download it and follow along with me during the training to understand each placement and each system I set up, how it was created, or simply start with a blank page and build this workflow with me to really see how I fix bugs and how I handle each part. So before we finish, in the next video, I'll show you how to set up a space, or actually an n8n server. If you already have an n8n server, you can go straight to the practical workshop. If you haven't set up an n8n server yet, I'll show you right now how to quickly install a high-performance server that allows you to download, import workflows, and most importantly, automate tasks for yourself or for other businesses. See you in a moment. So now actually we're going to need an n8n server. It's thanks to this server that I can host my different workflows and automate tasks. There are several ways to get an n8n server. You can download it and run it on your computer since it's still open source. But the problem with installing it locally is that, first of all, you need to have fairly advanced knowledge to be able to do the installation. So it's not a simple installation, it actually requires entering several commands in the terminal. And on top of that, there are a lot of nodes that can't be executed when you install it on your local machine. That's why it's highly recommended to get a subscription on n8n. Now, for the subscription, you have the option to do it directly on the n8n website. So here, when I go to pricing, I can select, for example, the plan for parents. And here's the price, it's $20 per month. And the downside of the official site is that you can only activate 5 workflows. 5 is really few, you know. That means I can have several workflows, but only 5 can be active at the same time, and that's very limited. That's why I actually recommend using hosting a server. So here on the hosting a server, I'll leave you the link that takes you directly to this page. Be careful, you need to make sure you're on the page that actually has this logo. On this page, you'll see that the server price isn't too expensive. It really starts at just €4.99. But if we look here, I have 3, or rather 4 packages. The one I use most often is this one, which comes with 2 processors. What's really interesting about this server, first of all, is that it's only €6.99. So it's very appealing for people who really want to get started at a low cost and have a powerful server, and above all, it's unlimited. That means the number of active workflows I can put here isn't limited to 5 workflows. No, it's unlimited, meaning I can add as many workflows as I want. Another thing, I can add a coupon here called Dr. Ferraz. That's a coupon. You can apply it here. It will give you yet another discount, which is very interesting. And all that's left to do is select the n8n server. So recently, actually, Hostinger added another option and it's free as well. Here, you just type n8n like this, and you'll see there's another server here called n8n plus 100 workflows. So this one is free as well. The installation is free. This actually allows me to have, with the installation of n8n, the most commonly used workflows by companies around the world for free, which are pre-installed and ready to be deployed. So as a result, this saves you a lot of time. And yes, I go for it because you don't have to pay anything extra for this workflow. Once you've made your selection, you just need to come here and click on Continue to start the installation. You'll see in 2 minutes you have the whole installation done. I'll make another video showing you all the steps so that in the end, you'll have access to n8n pre-installed with Hostinger. Let's get started. So the first thing to do is to select the location of your server. This isn't very important, but for me, I choose France since it's the closest server to me. So I click on Continue. Next, you simply need to search for n8n. You can either type n8n or go to the application section here and you'll find n8n. Be careful. Sometimes when you search for n8n, it might show you different version variations. So there's n8n and there's n8nq mode. Well, choose the most popular one, which is this one here, the simplest option. Here you'll find the basic installation options. Then you just need to click on Select. When you click Select, it will simply switch you to this mode. Here, it actually suggests a small program that will help you. Basically, it's an antivirus that will block unknown external connections. Here, you just select it. It's free. So I click on Next, and now it will simply ask me to create a password to access n8n on the VPS server. And here, you just go right here. That's it. So you click here. It will suggest a default password for you, or you can create your own password. And here, this is actually the name of your server. So you can just copy and paste this one. In any case, you can retrieve it later, but you should simply copy and paste this URL and your password somewhere safe. And there you go, it's done. You just need to click here on Finish. And now what it will do is start the installation and, if you will, the creation of your server. Generally, it will take a maximum of 5 minutes to get direct access to your server, which is a pre-configured n8n server. You won't have to type a single line of code. You'll have direct access to your dashboard to, well, create your first workflow. And that's it, it's done. So it shows me a message saying that the installation was successfully completed. And now I can simply access and manage, well, our dashboard, our server. So on this interface, you have the option to change the language here. You can set it to the language you prefer. And as you can see, my server is up and running. That means I have an online server that will be running for the next 2 years. So it won't shut down. So every time I create a workflow, it will be active and operational online. And to actually manage this server and simply access your n8n, you'll find a small option here called Manage the Application. You see, when I click here, it will switch me to my n8n interface. And so for the final step, I just need to enter my email address, my last name, my first name, and the password here. So this interface here is an interface that will secure my access to n8n. The other access we had earlier was access to our server, but this one, in fact, is access to n8n. So here, I just invite you to fill in this information and, of course, keep it in a safe place. And there you go, we're almost done. Last step, it asks me, do you want to receive a key or a license to activate your free lifetime license for your workflow? Well, of course, I'm going to click here to receive a code. It's a key that will unlock the workflows for life and for free. All right, I've received the key online in my email inbox. What am I going to do? I'm simply going to go here, actually, into my configuration area. And you'll see here in settings, you have the option to add your key. So look here, there's this option that lets you add the key. You just need to click. And now I'm going to copy and paste my key. And there you go. So now my key has just been activated. So you'll see that now here I simply have an unlimited number of uses for my workflow. And that's it. So now my n8n server is ready to be installed. So if I come back here to my dashboard, I'll simply have the option to easily start a new workflow by clicking here. Well, so now you have n8n installed. The first thing to do is to click on Create Workflow. Now, you should know, as we mentioned, there are 2 ways to do this. Either you follow along with me as we create the workflow from A to Z, simply creating the different nodes with me, or you also have the option to import my workflow, follow the training, and understand a bit about each node, each module, and what it does. That's why in the documentation, I will simply provide a download. So here, this is the complete download of the entire workflow. You can simply come here and click on import from file. So here, when I click here, I just need to select it from my computer. Here is the workflow already. There it is. So now I can simply click like this, hit open, and there you go. The workflow has just been opened. Of course, if this is your first time doing it, it's completely normal that you don't have what are called the NCAD keys. That means connecting your own Gmail, your own Google Sheet. That's what we'll be covering throughout the course, step by step. I'll show you how to create it. So here you have a choice. So for me, of course, to make sure you get the most out of this course, we'll start from scratch, from a blank page. And now I'm actually going to start creating this workflow. Let's get started. So we'll begin with the first step. This is one step. We'll set it up like this, so it's easy to understand. So in this step, I'll need a first node, which we call the trigger. The trigger always serves to start the workflow. Don't forget that later on, we'll also need to activate the workflow once we've finished all the work. The system will rely on the trigger to be able to start. So here for my trigger, I'm going to try to set up Gmail. In Gmail, I'm going to tell it, listen, as a trigger, if you find and detect that a message has been received, I want you to start running the entire workflow. So there you go. I've selected my trigger here. I can also give it a name to make things clearer. So here we're going to call it, Gmail, watch for new CV. So now it's going to try to see if there's a new CV being sent here. Now what we need to do is configure this node. So this is a very important node where we need to create what's called the credential. This will allow us to connect n8n with Gmail. So now I'm simply going to configure this node. This is a node that connects Gmail with my n8n account. I already have a credential, but we're going to create a new one, so a new connection. What's really interesting is that you'll see there's a very good detailed documentation provided by n8n. There's even a video here at the bottom that actually shows me all the details on how to create the node and the node's connection. And you should also know that Gmail isn't the only product, right? So there are several products with Google. If you scroll up, you'll see that we have Google Drive, Mail as well, Google Sheets, Tasks, Contacts, and Calendar. So all of these can be connected with n8n. Now, let's start making the connection step by step. So you'll see that it's actually very simple to do. And just below, you'll also find another official video. Here it is. So this is also a video that shows you how to make the connection. So our goal is to retrieve two types of information. The first piece of information is the client ID. The second piece of information is the client secret. So we need these two pieces of information to be able to connect our Gmail. So let's start with the 5 steps. You'll see that here, the steps are actually right here. So the first thing is that we need to access Google Cloud. Here, we're going to create a project. So that's the first thing to do. We're going to open this in another window. So here, on this page, of course, make sure it's really important to make sure you're logged in with the email account in question. Because sometimes if you have several email accounts, you might need to log in with different accounts, you know? So here, for example, I'm properly logged into my email account. So now I'm going to click here on console to be able to enter and create a project. So here, look, when I look here, I see a project. So each project actually contains several, let's say, features. So for each project, you can set up a lot of different types of connections, but it's very important to have a project. So if this is your first time making the connection, it's very simple. You click here and you find a little button called Create a Project or New Project. When you go to create a new project, you simply have a line like this one. There you go. There you go. A line like this one. I can add it to my favorites like this. All right. So now when I click on this, I will enter inside the project. So as you can see, I am indeed inside my project. And that's why when I make some changes here, they will have an impact on this specific project. So it's very important. For me, for each software, I create, you see, different projects. For n8n, I group everything together in this project. So that's the first step you need to do, as mentioned here, which is to create your project. Now, the next step is to enable the relevant API. So you'll see that here in the project, of course, I'm still inside my project. So when I click here, you'll find API service. I'm going to go to library. So that's the button I'm interested in. So when I enter the library, you'll see that here, there are all the Google products. There are really a huge number of services here. The ones I'm interested in, I'll search for them here. So for me, I'm going to look for Gmail. So here, I'm searching for Gmail. So when I find Gmail, you'll see that, of course, it detects that there are two results. I choose this one because I want to connect n8n with Gmail. If I want to connect it, for example, with other products like Google Docs, I just need to type here Docs, for example. So that's how you actually search for it. There you go. I do a search and here I find Google Docs. So for me, we'll just stick with Gmail and I'll go into that product. Now, once I'm inside Gmail, you'll see that it's activated. That's because I've already activated it. So for you, if it's your first time logging in, you'll find that here in Gmail, it will be deactivated. So you just need to click enable for it to become active. And here you have the green check mark. So as long as there's a green check mark, it means that your API, meaning Gmail in your project, is properly activated. It's as if you're granting permission to other third-party software to connect with Gmail. So now I need to do what's called the instant screen authentication configuration. It's like you're showing Google that you're working on a project so that it in turn gives you this authorization to use all these APIs. To do this, it's simple. You'll see that here, I can come back here. In any case, you have a complete documentation here that gives you step by step what you need to do. So now I'm going to go back to the home page. I come here, still within API and services, and you'll see that here, there's actually this option called Instant Screen Authentication. This is where I'm actually going to confirm and authorize and show Google that I'm working on a project. So now I'm going to enter this section. Now, once we're inside this section, you'll see that I'll need to update these three pieces of information: branding, audience, and client. So I'll start with branding, simply branding. Here, we're going to enter the name of the application along with an email address. So here you enter the name of the application and be careful, it's mandatory to provide the support email address. You can use the same Gmail address if you want. And well, if you want to add a logo, that's fine. This is actually for the design so that when you enter the project, you'll see the logo inside the project, but it's not mandatory. And here you're going to enter the authorized domain names. So be careful, you need to enter it like this, HTZR cloud. You put that here. And here, you also enter the developer's email address for Google's contact. You can use the same thing, the same Gmail address you used. That will be all for the branding section. Next, we'll move on to the section called audience. The audience is very important. I'll show you how we're going to set it up. Here, in fact, we're always going to stay in test mode, so we don't actually need to, we're not going to create an application here. What we need is a connection between n8n and Gmail. So here, we'll leave it in test mode and select the type as external. Since we're going to use an external application, it's not an internal application. And for users, it's very important to click here on Add User and simply add the email address of the user who is authorized to use Gmail. And that user will be yourself. So the same email address that you're using right now, you'll enter it here. That's why here inside Gmail, it's this user that will connect with later, who will be your Gmail login and password. This is the user who will be authorized to work on this project. And finally, we have the section called client. The client section is very simple. If it's your first time, you click on create client. When I click here to create a client, it will create a client like this one for me. And that's where you'll see that I'm going to retrieve what's called the client ID. This first code here, I'm simply going to copy it like this, come back here and paste it right here. This first code that you're seeing here is the first code that we're going to put here in this way. Now, what's left? The client secret is left. That is another code, and I'll show you how to retrieve it. It's very simple. If I come back here, if I go inside this client, this is where I'll find the client secret. There it is. That's the client secret. Of course, I can copy it using this little button here. This code here is hidden because I'm masking it since it belongs to me. This is the code that we'll use in a moment for our connection. So in reality, it's as if we've used the client ID, this one, and then the client secret, which is this one. These are the two codes that I will need. Before we finish, the very last step we'll need is actually here. The redirect URL authorizations. This means that when n8n asks Gmail a question, for example, like, what are the most recent email addresses or emails that have been received? Somewhere, Gmail in this project has to send the information back to them. And where is it going to send the information back to? It's to these redirect URLs. What are the URLs? You will always start with localhost, like this. You will always use, for the second URL, localhost with 3000 and /authentication callback. And you see here, there's a third URL. Now I'll show you where you can get it. You simply need to enter these 3 pieces of information. And how do you find the third one? Because the third one is specific to you, to your server. I'll show you right now how you can get it. Well, it's right here. This is actually the redirect URL that you retrieve. Of course, I copied the client secret. That's precisely the one I am currently missing. And so now my secure connection is fully ready. Be careful when it works. Of course, I absolutely need to click save. And even better, I absolutely had to log in with my primary Gmail account here. Because, you know, if someone gets hold of all this sensitive information, imagine someone managed to get this critical data. They can't do anything with it if they don't log in with Gmail, with your own Gmail account. Remember that we gave permission to our email address so it could connect in the audience section. This is my connection. Thanks to this connection, I'll have an identification like this one. Here, I have the client ID, and I also have the secret code. And now, it tells me that I'm properly connected. And when Google sees that on n8n, I'm providing all this information and I'm also logged in, it will send me back all the information related to my Gmail inbox. Here's another very important piece of information. Do you see this as a connection? Sometimes the session closes. That's for security reasons. It's very important from time to time in your workflow to always check that it's showing a green check mark here. And even sometimes we see that it shows a green check mark. But that doesn't mean you can't click on sign in again if you notice that the workflow isn't able to retrieve the emails. It doesn't happen all the time, but after several experiences we've had, we noticed that the session can be destroyed if it's not used, for example. After 3 months without triggering or activating your workflow, it's possible that, for security reasons, Gmail disconnects the connection here. And finally, I always tell you, you should come back to this documentation because honestly, the documentation is excellent. That's what I recommend because if there are ever any updates, you always find them here. And each time, if you want, for example, to understand something about any step, you'll find a video here, which is very helpful. Even if there are errors here, it gives you explanations for all of those errors. And I find it really interesting to follow the connections with this node. And now I also wanted to show you a little piece of information, which I think is also very interesting. Look here, I actually have the URL. This documentation URL, I can copy it. What I'm doing right now, you can do with any node on n8n. It's not just this one. Every time you have documentation for a node, what you'll do is copy that URL and go to ChatGPT. You'll come here and enable web search. This option is very important. What you'll typically do is explicitly tell it, I want to establish a direct and seamless connection between the powerful Gmail node and the versatile n8n platform. Then, you'll need assistance to meticulously guide you through the entire process to successfully achieve this integration. Help me do it. Here is the official documentation, and you can certainly do it exactly like this. This is a very simple trick. You can definitely try out, and you will clearly see. You can even tell it here, please give me the precise steps, the exact steps, and it will provide them for you. And you can tell it, I'm a beginner. That way it can really help you step by step. And here, it's really, really interesting. You'll see that here, ChatGPT is even able to refer to the video. And you'll see that here, look, it really gives you all the steps with the links in case you want to check the documentation. And really, it goes little by little, slowly, and that too is very, very interesting. If you ever get an error message, it's very simple. You just need to copy it here and tell it. For example, in step 4, I can't find the client ID. What should I do? And so it will really help you out. So here, it's a translation of the documentation in a way that's made for beginners. And that's one of the good habits you should develop and follow if you ever want to connect any client on your own with an n8n. So here we have our trigger. What I'm going to do, of course, is that I need to be logged in here. Once we're logged in here, I'm going to set my trigger to check every hour. Every hour, 1 minute. That means For example, let's say, I don't know, for instance, 13 o'clock and 1 minute, 14 o'clock and 1 minute. So each time it will check if I have any new emails that have been sent or not. So this will allow me to detect all the emails, but be careful, it's very important here at the filter level to ask it to look only for emails that haven't been read. So here I need to look for the emails that I haven't read. Here I find unread. So there's no need to display the emails I've already read, because when I receive emails related to applications, I don't open them. I let the AI and the workflow take care of that. Afterwards, I can also add here that it should look for emails that contain attachments. So here it simply has attachment. Here I require it. Here I have to write it like this, as attachment, because by default, look, it's not written by default. It shows up like this. Look, it's written in the background, but be careful, I have to type out the phrase. So here I'm going to copy and paste as attachment. Okay. I can also require here at the read status level unread email only. Thanks to this, I'm already going to apply a first filter to make sure I don't retrieve all the emails. And now I'm going to add an option here. Here, we're going to try adding the option. We're going to look for the option here that will allow the system to... Of course, you need to uncheck this. And here, in the option section, I'm going to tell it that I want it to download the attachment, because later on, we'll simply use it in the following nodes. So thanks to this, I was able to configure my trigger. Now I click Save. You see that here, my trigger is now operational. For my part, I simply set up an email to test. I'm creating a resume. I sent it with fake information. And now the system should detect in my email inbox that I was able to leave an email without having to read it. I can ask it here, as you can see, to execute this type. Here is going to execute this step and detect if I have an unread email. Now, I see that it has executed. I'm going to open it here and check. There you go. It simply just detected that there's an email. Now, it has downloaded the attachment. You'll see that later on we'll go through the classification steps, but for now, this shows that the email inbox is working properly and my trigger system is correctly reading my inbox.